Alright, welcome everybody to week 2 of the JY Dojo Zerg versus Protoss Zerg perspective video. This week we're going to be diving into the next 2 minutes of the game, which is 7:30 to 9:30-ish, maybe like 10 minutes to be a little bit more precise. Hopefully you're keeping up with the series. You've also done your own tasks and your own assignments on the first week, which is to practice to build up to 7:30. Obviously, in a real game, you might be bothered by a lot of things happening by your opponents, but there's a lot of games that kind of just go untouched up to about 7:30. So as long as you can really practice and you just know exactly what you're looking for at that time when you're untouched, you'll always have a benchmark to compare against, right? So heard some good feedback, heard a lot of you are finding this valuable. I hope this is kind of giving you a structured approach. I guess just as a reminder, don't overfit too much to like the actual build, but more so the approach of lining up benchmarks, writing them down, practicing them yourself, and also just asking yourself, how can I optimize to make this better? What happened in the game that kind of took away my attention from me just to execute the build, right? So yeah, with that said, we're gonna move on to this next phase of the game. The next 2 minutes are going to be largely executional. Now there's still important build order points that I'm going to go through, but at the same time, what happens in these next 2 minutes is going to lay the roadmap for everything forward, right? So let's recap really quick. It's a 5-hatch Hydra build. I'm on a single player. This is a separate game from the first one, or a separate replay. I'm assuming my opponents at the top left, assuming they went Forge Fast Expand, they're going for a 1-1 timing like you see in the Protoss video. It's right at about 7:30. So I've just played this game. I got 30 drones, got them evenly spread. Got about 11 hydras here. What is this? 5 hydras here, so about 16, right? We got a couple more making, so maybe about 18 in the next few seconds or so, okay? Or I guess 22. 22 if you include these two. Try not to get supply blocked and all that jazz. And around this time, the Protoss should be flying to my base with about 5 Corsairs and 8 Zealots, right? Behind this, they should probably have a Templar Archives that is done by now, right? Maybe they're adding a couple more gateways. They're probably cutting probe production, depending on the kind of build that they're going. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. They're adding up to 4 to 6 gateways. Maybe not 6 quite yet, but depending on the build, right? So for context, what we're gonna focus on next is what to do after the Corsairs and the Zealots come, right? So the entire purpose of just having these units sitting behind this wall, getting your build in place, is to make sure that you don't take any damage or minimal damage, or you can trade effectively if they attack into you from that push. So the question then becomes, okay, well, what do we do after? Like, let's say your opponent just tries to find an opening and then they turn around and go back home, okay? Tactically, you now have the number of hydras to defend any possible attack. So what do you do next? You're gonna drone. See how I'm making some drones right after, immediately after I deflect the push. That's gonna be super important, right? Because what we want to do is we actually want to drone to just about 45. So you move from 30 to about 45. So you make a 15-ish drone round. I also like to get my third gas, if you have a third gas, roughly around 70 supply, around this time where you're kind of making additional drones. You're making sure you're not taking any damage. You see how the overlords are all just bunched up in these 2 bases, so the Corsairs can't get any stray damage. I also start to take my 4th base as soon as I can. I think the earliest that you can take it is probably around 8 minutes. 8:30 is also really early, but anything before 10 minutes is probably okay, right? So let me just pause there for a second. Some of the risks here are that if you take it really early, what that means is that your hydras now need to come out, right? They have to come out. They're not sitting behind this wall where they're protected and that Zealots and Corsairs can't do any damage. Notice that when I move my hydras out, these are not as well protected, right? They're not sitting directly on top of it. You might have some straggling overlords here. Of course, Corsair can come pick it up. So what happens is the earlier you take your expansion, the more exposure the more risk you're exposing yourself to, okay? Now, if you feel like you have a good read on the game, you know where their army is, you have good scouting information, then you can go ahead and take it. But you might notice sometimes if you take it too early, a pack of zealots might come and deny it. Corsairs might, come and, sap your attention over here and pick up a couple of overlords. So you just have to be careful and be mindful of those kinds of things, okay? So you might also ask, well, what if they just like come kill me again, right? They can't, right? Because we just said that they can't kill you if you have this many hydras and you can block it behind your wall. They might be able to kill you if you're out of position like this, right? But the next breakpoints that you want to optimize for is the potential for a Zealot High Templar push that comes out at around 9:30, okay? 9:30, remember that. The reason why it's around 9:30 is right at around 8:30, a good Protoss going with this build is going to have 4 High Templar and 2 of them will have Storm at their base, okay? At around 9:30, they're going to have a lot of Zealots and they can come out and push you and to attack you. So what's the response, okay? So again, we're kind of veering off in this 9-minute mark. Let me pause here again, okay? Notice that I have 45 drones, right? And again, we've added 15 drones. You can probably split those 5 drones across each base. Maybe you'll have like 6 drones at the main because there's an extra mineral patch. If you want to optimize for that, definitely go for it. But roughly 5 per base so that you have an even spread. Make sure you're checking that they're evenly spread, roughly. And as you get that 45th drone, you want to make sure your Lurker upgrades are starting right on time. So I believe the range upgrades finish right at around 8:30. So let's kind of go back in time. I've been talking a lot of strategy here, but let's focus on the build. 8:15, it's done. And notice my Lurker aspect is going to should be starting very soon. I guess I'm making a base. Okay, here it starts right there, right? Starts at around 8:23ish. You probably could have gotten in at like 8:15, 8:20. And then the hatchery comes down here, okay? You really want to get that Lurker aspect up in time as soon as you can, because the faster your Lurker is up, the sooner you can go to your next drone cycle, okay? So here, we've made this Lurker. Now we're kind of in this weird zone. It's like 8:50, it's 9 minutes. They have Zealots, Corsairs, and High Templars. I'm sure every Zerg has lost to a bunch of Zealots and Storms, right? So in order to mitigate against that, once you've hit your 45th drone, make sure that you just make Hydras non-stop. I think I remade a couple of drones just to kind of compensate for the fact that I made a hatchery. I also made a second evolution chamber right before my +1 finish, so that I can start my +2 attack and +1 carapace roughly around the same time, okay? It's okay if your +1 attack starts, or +2 attack starts a little bit earlier because it's a +2 weapons, right? So it's okay to straggle it a little bit so that they line up just in time for their push later in the game, okay? So notice how I'm just making a whole bunch of Hydras, right? So let's just pause here. I promise I'd only go to the next 2 minutes, and I know that's not a whole lot, but the reason that we want to do this is because we want to make sure that we don't die to the Zealot High Templar push, right? So you can see here I've got, 10 Hydras, plus 12, that's what's 22, plus 3, 25, and then 11 more, which is 36-ish Hydras, right? And as soon as your Hydra Den is done, you make the Lurkers ASAP. Make sure you kind of spread them at your bases so you have Lurker coverage a little bit everywhere. And as they're moving out like right now, they might be at your base, and all you need to do is just stall until some of your Lurkers are done, because they can't have an observer at this time. So if you plant Lurkers in position to defend all these bases, that's kind of just like a repellent for the Zealots. And once you've repelled the Zealots, you can move on to the next phase of the game, which you can probably guess is to go through another drone round. But we're going to focus on that next week. So hopefully that was clear. Hopefully what you're going to be focusing on this week is, again, 5 single-player games where you execute this build, 30 drones, make Hydras. Once you've deflected their push from an imaginary opponent, make 15 more drones, spread them evenly, and make sure that your lurker aspect timing is right on point, okay? The later your lurker aspect is started, the more risk you have to just dying, and the more uncertainty that you have means you're probably over making units and under making drones. So just remember that. The more uncertainty that you have about what's going on, you're probably over making units, or you're just being super greedy and you're just gonna die anyways, right? So knowledge is power. Make sure you have that. Control the variables that you can control and scout what you can with your, Lings or Scourge or whatever that's out on the map. So I'm gonna stop there, at least for this build. I'm also going to assign 5 games for you to not do this build, but let's kind of roll it back to 730, right? So just do the same exact 5-hatch Hydra build, but have an opponent, and from this point on, instead of making the 15 extra drones, make all Hydras and go all in and try to kill your opponent. So what that means is you want to wait for your range to finish right at around 815. I'm not going over this in the video, by the way, just because I think it's straightforward. You just make a whole bunch of Hydras and just try to just do or die there. Don't even try to macro from it. Just try to win at that very moment. Bring some Overlords. Your Overlord speed should be done. And you just bomb them at their base and punish them if they don't have any High Templar. The reason why I'm asking for this as an assignment is that you cannot play 5-hatch Hydra only defensively like this, right? Like only just sitting back and not instilling any fear that you might be going for an all-in. And what I want you to experiment with is doing both so that you understand that there's a macro mode and then there's an all-in mode, and that there's value in making your opponents unsure about which one you're going to do. And that's going to be a little bit more of an execution type thing. You can leverage your unit's movement. You can leverage just your multitasking to feint an all-in. Like maybe you just pretend like you're just sending your Hydras there, that you're going all in. And if a Protoss isn't scouting your production and they don't see that you're actually making drones and you're faking it, you punish them. That's a way to punish a low-level Protoss. You feint an all-in, right? Or you punish a low-level player by just saying, hey, you didn't get your Templar Archives at 6:30, and you don't have Storm ready by 8:30, and I'm going to come kill you. And if they don't have their Storm and you're macroing correctly and you micro decently well, all Protoss will die. Just remember that as a tip. If you didn't take any damage, they don't have Storm, they only have Zealots, unless they make like 8 cannons or something, they're gonna die. And if they make 8 cannons, then you're probably sitting pretty. You could probably just macro from that and win the game. So again, we'll stop there. Hope you guys are having fun with it. I know it's a little bit annoying to go through some of these tasks and stuff, but this is the process of improving and structured learning, okay? So again, if you're in the live cohort, feel free to ask questions. If not, you can also just drop comments here, and then hopefully I can try to respond to them as well. So peace out, guys.